Welcome to Complex Creatures, exploring spirituality and the common good.
Here at Complex Creatures, we're interested in asking questions about spirituality and the common good. Just some components that make us truly complicated animals. Today on the show, we have Jonathan Boo Powell. That's right, he goes by Boo. Jonathan's a great guy. He's a friend of mine, and I get to serve where I serve, just down the road from where he serves. He is the campus pastor at a place called CCF, which is a ministry serving students at Georgia Tech. Boo and his wife and family have an interesting story. Boo and his wife Heather moved from the campus of Georgia Tech all the way to southeastern Ukraine, and for about 21 years served as missionaries. They were rooted here in Georgia and then uprooted and worked hard to learn a language and a culture, to be rerouted in a new place and to serve. And in a very recent time, they felt uprooted once more as they were called back to the United States. And then with the war between Russia and Ukraine, that really cut a lot of their work there short. I wanted to talk with Boo about this experience, what it means to have a calling that would take you away from your chosen field of study, where he was studying at Tech and looking towards a management degree. He ended up going to seminary and then off into mission work. And what it feels like to go through these experiences of rootedness and renewal, and rootedness and uprootedness that would bring, again, renewal. I commend his ministry to you and his life. He is a gentle human being. He's raised wonderful children. He and Heather are incredibly compassionate people. And if we could clone people like them, I think we should just have a greater, kinder, gentler world. Listen to this conversation I have with Jonathan Boo Powell. Well, Jonathan Powell, Boo, it's great to have you on Complex Creatures. This is a podcast where we think about spirituality. We are complex creatures. We are spiritual creatures. We're full of all kinds of contradictions and beauties. And we like to explore spirituality as it is a underutilized tool for thinking about the common good. So we like to think about the big picture and how spirituality can play a part in it. You serve in a very spiritual role day to day, helping the lives of college students. Can you tell us about where you serve and the people that you serve?
Okay. I'm the executive director, lead campus minister at the Georgia Tech Christian Campus Fellowship. We are located right in the heart of Georgia Tech's campus, down the street from the football stadium, where we're currently 8-0, and in between dorms and fraternity and sorority houses. We have a house that sits right there in the middle of all that, and we serve the Georgia Tech campus and its students.
I noticed that you dropped in that you're 8-0. So I don't know when we'll release this. This is actually, friends, this is October the 30th, the day before Halloween on 2025. And yes, Georgia Tech is doing well. And you can feel it. You can feel it around town and with Tech alum. They're excited. I have been there at the CCF house on Techwood Drive to see you are situated right amongst a party atmosphere, and a studious atmosphere. And I've witnessed, several hundred, maybe 150, 200 kids being fed dinner on a lawn while other kids at other properties might be playing bags and cornhole and drinking beers. So it's right there in the middle of it all. Yep. It's really cool. Yeah. So okay, let's talk about your biography a little bit beyond that. For my listeners, I want you to know I'm friends with Boo, and I'm fascinated by the fact that some years ago, he and his wife felt the call to not serve necessarily people on our shores, but in other shores. Can you tell us about being uprooted from America and finding a home somewhere else? And I'll let you tell the story and where you went and when that was. Can you tell us about that?
When I graduated high school, I went to Georgia Tech. That's where I went to college and got involved in the campus ministry that I'm now leading, which is just kind of an amazing story that I get to come back to a place that changed my life. So I graduated from Tech in '93, and I was an intern at this campus ministry, CCF, for a couple of years. And while I was at CCF, started to feel God calling me and my girlfriend at the time, Heather, to ministry. When I went to Tech, I was expecting to get a job, to live in Atlanta, to stay in the Atlanta area my whole life, and got to CCF, and God started speaking into my life, and that was kind of the first time I ever asked the question of God if if He wanted any direction or say in what my life would look like. Before that, it was all my plans and ideas, and just hoping
Let me ask a interrupting
God bless it. Yeah.
question there for you, because I mean, a guy like me, for those who listen to this, they know that I serve vocationally as a minister, and there's a point in my life where I went to school for that. People like me were in classes with other kids who felt a calling upon their life. You grew up thinking you might be in some sort of tech related field. Georgia Tech's one of the best schools in the country for that. You went there. Um, how many, how odd do you think it is that you got that sense of call, that you and Heather got it? When you're thinking about your cohorts and other students that you now also shepherd, is that a unique feeling, or do more people have a call, in your opinion, to other
Mhm.
roles? What do you think?
I think maybe at the time it felt a little bit unique, but as years have gone by, um, the decades that CCF has been in existence, a lot of other folks that came to Tech to be engineers, to be architects, to be work in business, have also felt that same call,
Mm.
and so it's something that yeah, lots of folks. But at the time, it was. Maybe it was unique, but it was something that, and it was something that for us was gradual. We went. One of the things that CCF does every year is we go to Juarez, Mexico, which is just across the border from El Paso, and build a house. And we started with an organization called Amor, and then it changed to Casas por Cristo. And that 1 week trip where we built a house for a family that needed a home was kind of the spark that got us starting to think differently, and seeing the world differently. And we started to pray about that. And then in 1993, Heather said, I think I want to do something longer, go on a longer mission trip. And she spent a summer in Chile, Santiago, Chile, and came back and said, I feel like God's calling us to be missionaries. And I immediately
Wow.
got scared.
Absolutely.
And so I spent the next summer in Kenya with the Maasai tribe, trying to see if the call she heard, that if I would hear that as well. And it was a really great summer, a really hard summer, but it came back feeling the same way, that yeah, this was what God was calling us to, even though we had gone to Tech to be, Heather's an architect major, and I was a business major, and we got degrees in those things. But that was when things changed for us, and we started trying to figure out where God was calling us to.
Wow. Okay. And so, long story short, there, where did you end up choosing?
Ukraine. We really loved the way our mission organization operated, that they partnered with nationals, that everything we did was alongside Ukrainians. We didn't show up thinking that we were bringing the gospel to a place that never heard it before, but that we partnered with nationals. And there was a really strong emphasis on learning language. And so we just kind of loved the way they operated. And in 1999, we moved to Ukraine, Heather and I, in September of 1999, and thinking that we might spend 4 years there, 8 years there, and ended up being there for 22 years.
That's incredible. Tell me about this experience of sort of being uprooted from this life in the southeast in Atlanta, where you thought you'd make a home, to now as far away as the Ukraine, culturally, linguistically, other side of the world. How long did it take for you to feel a sense of being rooted there and connected and make it home?
I think it took a while. Our first year was really hard. It was language learning. and we were living in a city that we knew that we weren't going to stay in, that we were going to end up somewhere else. And so that was a year kind of intensive, just really, really hard of learning culture and language, and at the same time trying to figure out where we would land. And we ended up landing in a little town called Berdyansk, which is in southeastern Ukraine, right on the Sea of Azov, and that's where we lived for the next 21 years. And we partnered with a small local church that had a deep desire to be missional, that they wanted to do more than just grow their church. They wanted to have an impact in their city. They wanted to have an impact in the villages surrounding their city. And so felt like God had brought us together. But like getting a sense of that being home, I don't know when that happened. Our first term was really, really hard. We were there for 4 years. And the last year was probably the hardest, of having some bad run-ins with the police and with mafia and like some just scary things. Also, that was during that first 4 years, our first daughter was born, so that was a good thing in the midst of all of that. But it was probably 5, 6 years into living in Ukraine, where, yeah, it really started feeling like our home. And I think probably bringing our daughter, having her with us, that changes just all the memories that we were making with her.
Yeah, that must. But the language component must be as well. Having a shared or a common understanding of language is so fundamental. You told me a story. I would love for you to tell it to us again about that language acquisition and how you. I mean, it was just you didn't have this like background in the culture and the language before you went to Ukraine, but it was immersive, and you went. I'm saying these correct terms, right?
Yep,
It was
yep.
immersion. You went there, and like you had phone conversations and conversation partners, and you were just sometimes like making advances in it, and sometimes plateauing, right?
Yeah,
And yeah. Explain some of the, and then talk about the lady who was calling you on the phone during
yeah.
sub degree.
We when we landed in Ukraine, I didn't speak Russian, I didn't speak Ukrainian, and so we had a language helper that worked with us every day that would come out, and we had spent some time with an organization out in Colorado that taught you, gave you the tools to learn any language. And so Heather and I would tell our language helper every day, this is what we want to learn. And our language helper was just a teenager. And he would come to our house every day for 3 hours and work with us. And then we would take what we learned and go out and practice it and use it. And we got there in September, and then around Christmas, he was wanting to go home and visit his family. And he said, I don't want your language to stall. So I know this lady who is the Ukrainian term for it is an invalid, but she had been in an accident when she was 18, and she was confined to her bed. But she was a real strong believer, and had an incredible prayer life. He said, I'm going to connect you with her. And he wrote down 20 like really super basic questions, like, what color is the sky today? Is the sun shining? How are you feeling? And I wrote down these 20 questions for us and for her, and said she's going to call you every day and just ask you some questions just to keep you going. And that's what she did. And her name was Olia. And in the beginning, she'd call us once a day, and by the end, and once he returned, she called us every day, multiple times a day. And sometimes it was, Heather and I both looking at the phone. It was like, you answered, and I'm not answering it, because we were just so overwhelmed. But she persisted, and that lady, with her phone calls, just all throughout the day, all throughout the week, we credit her more than anyone else with teaching us Russian. Because she had the desire, she prayed for us, and loved us, and wanted to help us succeed. And for us, it was, I think it gave her purpose in life, a higher purpose, a calling, a mission, and she was amazing how she served us and taught us Russian, sometimes against our will.
Yeah, you told me once that she'd call you. You guys said, "Let's just not answer the phone. We're exhausted," and then she
Yeah,
would leave a message saying, "Hey, it's like 20 below zero. You're not outside.
yeah, I know
I
you're
know you're
home.
home."
Answer the phone. Yep.
That's the. Yeah, it's funny. I see persistent people like that in all churches,
Hmm.
and it takes all types to make up the community. Tell me a little bit about how you feel this experience in Ukraine shaped the way you understand not just the concept of maybe like being at home, but just in God's kingdom, like your sense of how you are or how you understand God's world to be.
Hmm.
Did it change it dramatically?
I think for us, it just broadened just our understanding of God and His Holy Spirit and how He's at work sometimes right under our noses. And,
Mm.
that there's things going on that we're just not even aware of. And we think we're heading out to this, remote, isolated village. And again, somehow bringing the gospel to the folks and then getting there and recognizing how much God has already been at work there. Um,
That's it's got to be humbling. I mean,
oh,
and sort of like puts us in our place. I mean, it happens to me too. Still, like to this day, like I'm supposed to be the one with answers, right? And
sure.
it comes from my child.
And that was some of the most kind of beautiful things that we got to be a part of was these little villages that, when it was the Soviet Union, there was a collective farm there that employed the entire village. That village was sustainable, but when the Soviet Union fell, and it only takes a few families to run these big farms. And then everybody else is left without work. That most of these villages that we ministered to won't be there in 20 years
Mm.
because the kids grow up and they move away, go to a bigger town for a job or for an education, don't return. But while these villages existed, we ministered there and we worked there. But these folks that lived in these villages ministered, yeah, to us in amazing ways of, um, just showing us what the gospel looks like when it's all you have in
Mm.
some ways.
You stayed there for 22 years. That's longer than you expected. So apparently, it felt like you were called to it, that you were committed to it because of a purpose that was
Hmm.
deep. Tell us why you had to leave.
So we left. I mentioned my daughter being born there. I have two
Mm.
daughters. One was born in 2002, Maya, and and then my second daughter, Sasha, was actually born in England because the paperwork was so incredibly hard, almost impossible in Ukraine. It was like the first foreigner that was ever born there, is what it felt like as we were going through that process. But we had two daughters, and Maya was born in 2002. So she turned 18 in 2020. And so that was always a date that we knew that we would be coming back for a furlough or a visit to get her into college. And then COVID happened, and we were in lockdown, and we couldn't leave Ukraine. Um,
Wow.
and when we finally were able to and get back to the States, get her into college, we were planning on being in the States in the Atlanta area for about 6 months to a year, get her settled, kind of teach her how to be an American, and give her a driver's license and bank accounts, and just
Yeah.
how the world works, how America works. And that was one of the things that was kind of strange for us, realizing that our daughters weren't, even though we're Americans and they have American passports, they're not culturally, they're not very American, and there was a learning curve there. And so we were trying to help her, and our intention was to go back to Ukraine. And
Oh.
we were staying in some furlough housing that was given to us, and it was in like a retirement community, and this was before uh, people could get vaccinated, and so it was kind of on lockdown, and so it was a bit of
Mm.
a ghost town. And Heather and I
Yeah.
would go out every night just walking in this retirement community and talking about our future. And for 20 years, every time we came home, if we felt very clearly that God was calling us to return, that there were things for us to do and new opportunities, and this time felt different, and it just really felt like God was saying, both to Heather and I, and also to our daughters, that we were done.
Mm.
And the only thing that was different was COVID, and that didn't feel like that was, that we were done forever. So we didn't understand that. We had been at war with Ukraine, with Russia. So this is 2020, and so we had been at war with Russia since 2014. Our little town of Berdyansk was only 45 minutes from the front line. So since 2014, we had been surrounded by soldiers. We had army camps, we had jets and helicopters, we had military curfews, we had all that stuff in our city, but nothing had changed. We had gotten used to that, so we didn't understand, why we couldn't return. And we really struggled against that because we wanted to. That was, we wanted to go back. And even our daughter, Maya, who was staying here, wanted us to go back so she could go home.
Because that was her home.
Yeah. And that
Yeah.
was her home. That was Sasha's home. That was our home.
Mhm.
And we finally just accepted because it was really clear that God was saying we're done. And so in 2021, we went back for the summer and said goodbye and just tried to finish well. And it was a beautiful summer where God just felt like God was literally throwing people in our path, that we'd be walking down a street and somebody'd step out of a store that we needed to say goodbye to. And, somebody we weren't sure how we were going to track down or see. And it felt like we were able to say goodbye and finish well to everyone. But our hope had been to go back that summer and stay. And if we had stayed as we intended, we would have lasted maybe 2, 3 more months, and then they started evacuating. And then in 2022, into February, Russia came in and took our town. And so since then, our town has been Russian occupied. And so that was us, that was God saying, we didn't know that was coming, but God did. And he was being really kind and gracious to us to give us that opportunity to say goodbye. And so, those are the circumstances around us having come
It's a
home.
lovely way to understand that. Let me ask some weird. I've got weird curiosities, but weird person questions. Like, do you ever dream in Russian?
Sure.
You do.
And with language learning, there came a point, like that first year of language learning, all of our Russian understanding is still rooted in English. It's all those words are connected. It's like, well, what is the word for good? And it's хорошо. And so, those connections are really strong. But as you learn language, and as you're taught language by people who aren't English speakers, it's just like, hey, he just said this word. What does that word mean? And they explain the whole thing in Russian to me. Then it has no attachment to English whatsoever. And so if things happened in Russian, if it was relationships that were in Russian and all those things would have, dreaming, thinking, all that would be in Russian, just as it got less and less connected to English.
Wow. Okay, that's interesting to me. Do you did you feel when you were basically uprooted from that place that had become your home, and then you adopted the culture, the language? You had two children who were basically Ukrainian culturally. And you came back here. Did you feel a sense of like existential displacement for a while? Was it hard, or did you feel like you kind of hopped back into a track or a stream that you were on when you were younger, and then just kind of went with it?
No, it was really hard for our entire family, because it just we were in like just a couple of years before we had to leave, my role in our mission organization was growing. And we were getting to do more kind of mentoring of younger missionaries, and so that was part of it. And so there were things there were like new things happening that we were excited about, and then our role in Ukraine was changing and growing, and
Right.
we had did a lot with the deaf and hearing impaired in Ukraine, and that ministry had new opportunities and was growing, and so there was like I said, we really felt like there was still a lot for us to do, that there were things we were excited about. And so when we came back to the States, it was very much kind of like, well, what now?
What now?
And had really no clear understanding of what was next for us, and just felt very much kind of lost.
Isn't that interesting? You felt like it was a calling. You felt like it was God, but it wasn't easy. I remember when my wife and I felt led, and I guess my first child, because she was a baby, from a ministry we were very happy in basically my wife's home community, just an hour north of my home community, and all our closest friends were there. So it was like a really great and happy experience for us. But we felt in a way that we had never felt before, this like incredible calling and open door to come to the role to the place I am now, and eventually the role I serve in now. And it was, if you are going to be supernatural, mystical, or, in providential speaking about it, like it is one of those moments where it's like, it's goosebumps just to talk about all the little things that lined up. And I just never saw anything like that in my life that was that sort of obvious. And as soon as we landed and got going, depression just sank in. I mean, sure, there was culture shock and everything, but you just felt lonely. You felt lonely. You didn't have all these relationships that were around you. And I moved from the Midwest to the South, and there is a little slight language difference, but like the cultural linguistic, like just the accepted patterns of something, or just the easy rhythmic things you can fall into because you're enculturated. Those were just a different enough that I just felt sort of topsy-turvy, and I didn't know really what my place was, even though it felt like it was pretty obvious. And
and I think for us it was also, I think some of our identity was wrapped up. Like, who are we now if we're not missionaries to Ukraine?
Who are we now?
Yeah, and I think that was kind of recognizing that. But I think the hard thing, especially, I don't think I'll ever be able to go back to our home, to Berdyansk, because I don't think it's ever going to be Ukraine again.
Oh, really?
And so, just having something just kind of ripped away from you, taken away from you, because that was that was part of, it's like, well, even if we leave, we could always go back and visit folks. We could always, go, my daughter just got married. Maya, that was born in 2002, just got married a few weeks ago. And, at her wedding we had a table full of Ukrainians that had, some of them we hosted so that they could come over here. Others were hosted by other folks, but these are people that we hadn't seen since we were in Ukraine, because probably 60-70% of the people we knew that lived in our little town are now scattered all over the world. So even if we can return, a lot of those folks aren't going to be there. They're all over the place now. But I think that was part of the thing also, was just like, that we've lost something that's we're not going to ever get back in any, in any real sense.
Yeah. I don't want to get too esoteric, but the past day and a half, I have been thinking about this phrase of passing through, and because of something I'm working on. And believe it or not, that led me to a geographical and aquatic reality called avulsions, river avulsions. This is strange, but have you ever, you think about a river, you tend to think of it as you think of it as a permanent object. I mean, yeah, you think about it like Heraclitus, the philosopher. You never step in the same river twice. We always think it's always moving. Yeah, that's true. But generally speaking, the Chattahoochee's over there, and the
Right.
Mississippi's over there. River avulsions show that over time, rivers have like meandered and moved really like 50, 60 miles away from, right now. And then it is nothing but change. That's what a river is, right? And just thinking about how that concept of passing through and all that stuff is reminding me how the true constant being change is the reality, but the experience of life that we have, we somehow solidify moments and we safeguard them in memory, for good and for ill, because we can think back on the relationships in a very meaningful way. And that's positive and helpful. That's something we can ground our identity in. And for ill, because we can romanticize the past,
Sure.
and we can idolaterize the past. But I'm curious about the great uprooting from Ukraine, coming back here, experiencing what you experienced, and we also mourn the loss of your home community. Has there been renewal in all of that for you
Sure.
in any way? In what ways does that look? How does that take shape?
Yeah, when we came back, we were still able to live in that little retirement community, and they were really, really gracious to us. But while we were living there, it's like, okay, now what do we do? And trying to figure out what was next. And my home church, Southwest Christian Church, offered me a position, created a role for me, and the campus ministry that I'm now a part of, CCF, offered Heather a position there, and so that was, I think God, saying, gave us a piece of God's taking care of us, and just kind of God's community coming alongside us, and when I took the role at the church, I told them that let's do this. Let's say 3 years, because if I can go back to Ukraine, I want to go back to Ukraine. And in that time, we were trying to figure out where to live, and turned out we tried to get a mortgage, and turned out I didn't have a credit score, and so we were denied a mortgage, and I was given the advice that I needed to get a credit card, and I needed to use it if I that's how you become bona fide.
The least advisable thing in the world: get a credit
Terrible.
card, right?
Yeah, not having debt is not a good thing, and if you want a mortgage. But we stayed down by the airport in a little town called Fairburn. That was kind of in between my church and CCF, and trying to figure out what was next for us. And but that season, I think, was really good for us, of just kind of healing and being able to be together as a family. And as my daughter went off to college, that we could support one another, because she was at Barry, which was just an hour and a half away. My younger daughter, who had always dreamed of going to a regular school and just kind of seeing what that was like, instead of being homeschooled, we had a really amazing Christian private school in Fairburn that she was able to attend and get that experience. And there was just a lot of good. We were still very much in mourning, but it was just a lot of good comfort, and just feeling like God was taking care of us. And that those years in Fairburn felt like passing through. That it felt like we weren't settled. I think God was part. I think the reason we didn't get a mortgage was that wasn't where we were supposed to end up. And that's near the end of that time, or I guess 2 years in, the person that had started CCF, a guy named Rick Harper, he was my campus minister when I was, he's the guy that changed my life and started us on this journey that ended in Ukraine. Decided he wanted to do something different and was stepping out of his role, and and CCF was taking applications for who would be the next executive director. And I did not put my name in the hat.
Mm.
I assumed that they would like somebody younger, hipper, cooler. That I was not the person for the job. And someone put my name in the hat. But I distinctly remember Heather coming home one night, and we were sitting in the living room. She said, "Don't talk, just listen," and and talk to me about considering this, and that she thought I would be the right person.
Wow.
And so that's when, and that's kind of been my life is, as I started at the beginning, Heather went to Chile, came back and said, I think God's calling us to be missionaries, that I'm a follower of Jesus, but I've also kind of trailed behind Heather for most of my life as well. It seems like she sees a little more clearly than I do.
Don't talk, just listen.
Yeah.
Maybe some young husbands. Good advice.
Yeah. Yeah.
Let me ask a question about this theme of rooted and renewed, the renewal season that you're in now. I mean, I think it can be a very American or maybe just a Western capitalist mindset that we're just going to completely start over, completely reinvent or whatever. But being organic creatures, we are always being born of the past. We are always being born from what's come before us. That's just the nature of life. What elements, and I'm assuming that means that your renewal season that you're in and have been in, means you carry your experience of Ukraine with you. You carry people with you. What are you carrying with you from your old roots that are still shaping and giving life and new expression today?
I think what we're carrying is just an excitement, of a testimony of, that God, that when we're open to hearing God's voice, that He wants to speak to us, and He does have plans for us, things that He would like, that He kind of sets before us and says, what about this? And stepping into this at CCF has been, for renewal, and getting to now kind of steward the ministry that changed my life.
Mm.
It's kind of crazy that of just
Yeah.
being able to come home
Mm.
to come home to a place that I love. And part of, every time we came home on a furlough, we were speaking at retreats, we were mentoring interns, we were coming around, that we wanted to be around this place because of how much we loved it and how much it changed our life. And then being asked to come on, and be on staff and to
Mm.
be able to speak into students' lives the way Rick and others spoke into my life
Mm.
is just, it's one of those things where I can't believe I get to do this.
Yeah. Mm. I have a specific question in mind about something you said you learned or saw with your eyes wide open in Ukraine, and that is that you went there thinking you're going to go help this smaller church, and what you find is that God was already there working. God had already shown up in advance of you. Right?
Mhm.
You find that still? Do you find that lesson still in campus ministry, working with college students, Gen Z, Gen Alpha, whoever these guys are?
Yep. Yeah. I still get that stuff confused. Um, yes. A few weeks ago, one of the things we started it last year, and it's just been an amazing, beautiful, God-inspired thing. Is that we call it storytellers, and it gives students an opportunity to take over an evening at CCF, and they plan and execute the entire, what the whole evening looks like, and they are the speakers. That
Yeah.
no staff, no residents, no interns stand up and say a word. That it's the students take control of that evening. And a few weeks ago, we had our first one of this semester, and it was international storytellers.
Mm.
And this summer, we had 8 students go abroad to serve in missions in, I believe, 4 or 5 different countries. But it was an opportunity for them to share their stories and how their experience changed their understanding of God, how it changed their understanding of themselves, how it changed their understanding of the world. And it was so powerful to hear. And, last year it was us as a staff trying to inspire them to consider going on these trips, going to these different countries, serving in these ways. And now it was them inspiring their fellow students, which is going to be so much more impactful, so much more meaningful than coming
Yeah.
from me. But just seeing that and seeing these, when everybody, when there's a lot of talk about, as there always is, of this generation, and especially the ones that go off to college, and what are they teaching them at that college, and seeing these, being in a room full of people tonight. I'm going to be in a room full of people who are on fire for Jesus and ready to change the world, and I'm just trying to steward that.
Yeah.
And
That's incredible.
yeah, it's beautiful, and yeah, it's humbling. So there's moments where I'm just sitting in the room, just overwhelmed by, when they're all singing and lifting their hands, when they're praying over one another, when they're taking on leadership roles and spiritual leadership roles, and just like, my gosh, what is God going to do through these folks?
I love to hear that. It was a delight to be there. I believe I was there on September the 11th, actually. Not that I'm good at remembering where I am on every day. It's just the day itself,
that's
right?
that's a memorable one.
Yeah. And I was there with my son, who's 6, and the students were so good with him, and he was
Yep.
running around like a terror with some of his friends, who I know their parents served there, so they were there, and I just thought, wow, these kids, pardon me, these young,
I call them kids.
yeah, these young adult college students are so nice to let us
Yeah.
be here, and
Yeah.
I was really appreciative of that. Um, we're going to wrap up here in a few. Let me ask you a question. If you could put one message out there right now that you feel like the world needs, or maybe college students, or maybe just the whole wide world, you want to give your hey, focus on this one thing. Do you have a message?
Our message this year as a ministry comes from Psalm 121. I look up to the hills. Where's my help come from? My help comes from the Lord. And that's kind of one of the things we're trying to do for our students this year, is just to get them, because that's a song of ascents. That's, people journeying to Jerusalem, and they would sing these songs as they're going up. And so it makes me think about hiking, and and so often when you're out hiking in nature, you'll go 20 minutes and realize all I've seen is my shoes, because I'm trying not to stumble. I'm not trying not to twist my ankle, and you just have to pause sometimes and look up just to see what's around you, and the reason that you came in. The reason you drove all this way and parked, and hiked into this forest was for to see this nature around you. But so often we just kind of look at our shoes and and kind of focus on our small story. And I think part of what that psalm is talking about is looking up and just seeing the bigger story that we're a part of, and that God is doing things around us, and just being able to see that and to recognize that our small story matters, but it's part of something so much bigger.
Yeah, yeah. I know exactly what you mean on that hiking thing. I was with my family out, and I was noticing that I kept looking at those roots. You
Yep.
don't want to stumble on the roots. So you're looking down, and you're missing the vistas and the trees, and missing perhaps the deer, and what else is there to see. Thank you for this, Boo, and I'm so glad to know you and Heather, and glad to know what you're doing at CCF. It is a delight. Listeners, they have some students that come to our congregation on Mondays to help serve the unhoused. It's a delight to see them doing more than just studying in college, and more
Yep.
than just the fun and frivolity. And even with a winning season for Tech, it's good to see them doing some other things as well. But
Yeah.
Thank you so much for your time today.
Thank you so much, Jarrod. I really
Well,
appreciate it.